We're here tonight with Wesley Smith for Congress in the state of Missouri, otherwise known as the Wolf of Washington. Alongside me here is Michael Vasquez from No Soundbites Allowed, Liberty First Foundation, and National Firearms Coalition. Bringing Wesley onto the show tonight to kind of talk to him a little bit about his opinions and views and his congressional campaign. Kind of shed some light on, things that he wants to achieve in Congress if he does win, and just kind of talk a little bit about his campaign trail on the way. You guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick? We'll get going.
I'll start off real quick. Just for everybody who knows, again, I'm Michael Vass, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, doing with No Soundbites Allowed, and I also appear on the Liberty First Foundation as well as here at the National Firearms Coalition. I've been a political commentator for 15 years. I've been interviewing candidates for local, state, and federal offices, including Vice President of the United States, since 2008. And I look forward to being able to have a conversation today with Wesley, and I think it'll be interesting. I'm going to be dealing mostly with non-gun issues, so just so everyone knows what I'll be.
My name's Wesley Smith. I go by the Wolf of Washington. I'm running for Missouri's 2nd Congressional District. I started my career after I retired from the Army in 2020. I was basically told I wasn't allowed to run in layman's terms. Excuse me, sorry about that. And so I decided to run for office to continue my service in the United States. And the best way I could see myself serving after I got out of the military was to serve in Congress. So that's why I'm kind of here right now. I've been fighting here on the front lines in St. Louis County. And so now I'm running for office, Missouri's 2nd Congressional District. So I'll be on the Republican primary August 2nd.
All right. So, trying to get things underway here a little bit. One of the big questions that we really have, that I know you and I have already kind of touched base on just through comments on the page and whatnot, is your stance on red flag laws. Do you believe in red flag laws? And if not, how do you propose to do away with red flag laws if you do win candidacy?
I absolutely am against red flag laws. And you kind of talked earlier about this and touched base, but we'll bring it up to the viewers tonight as well. 100% against red flag laws. Red flag laws would allow the government to overstep their jurisdiction in a way, right? To be able to, anyone could point out anyone as a red flag. And what I mean by that is, typically with our veterans and the American citizens, I could report my neighbor, or my neighbor could have a disagreement with me and report me and have my firearm, my God-given liberty, my foundational liberties taken away from me, my God-given right to own and protect myself and my family, be taken away like that from anybody, anywhere in the United States. So we have to stop catering to the radical left and trying to work with the left on proposing legislation. There shouldn't be restrictions on firearms when it comes to these hot topics, right? And what I mean by that is, specifically with red flag laws, it's going to stop people, fighters. I fought for my country. People who fought for their country, they can't even defend themselves in their own country when they had to use those same rights all overseas. And we have to stop tyranny from the radical left. We have to fight on American first values.
Comments.
Okay, is it a comment? Okay, my bad. I'm sorry about that, guys.
Yep.
I've never used this platform before, so it's all new to me. So it just comes up, and I was like, what is this? Okay, we have to fight the radical left, and we need America First conservative candidates, people who are proven, tried and true fighters, tried and true leaders, to be out there and fight for our Second Amendment rights, because the Second Amendment protects the other 26.
All right.
So I understand what it is to run for a congressional race. I've done so myself in 2014 for the New York 22nd District, and I know it can be very difficult. So with that understood, I've done some research on you, Wesley, and I want to understand, according to the most recent FEC filings that I was able to find, It seems that you've received so far a total of $5,600 in loans for the campaign. You currently have a staffing of one individual reported, and you've had two websites, one being wolfofwashington.org and wesleyforcongress.com, that are both dead at this time. Obviously, being involved in Congress is more than just one issue and involves many things and usually requires a staff. Can you tell us why are we seeing this data reflected in the FEC currently?
Absolutely. Yeah, let me go into that. So we started at wesleyforwashington.com. That was our first website. We just, in the past 28 days or so, we launched the new website, thewolfofwashington.org, right? So we had started switching over. We have a website. They're building our website right now. Most of it is finished. It's not completed. That goes to the website. That covers that. As for the FEC filings, we have been filing paper filings, right? Actually, I have copies of them with me in my briefcase right below me right now. We've been doing paper filings. Well, they never uploaded them once they got them to U.S. House of Representatives in the federal election commission. They never updated them. So all the money that we have raised for my campaign has come out of my pocket. $197,000 I've spent out of pocket on my campaign. Now we have this lady. Her name's Jess. She works for Federal Election Commission. She's manually inputting our data from our hard copy receipts, and she's manually putting them into the FEC website. So hopefully within the next week or so, we'll have an upload of our final FEC filings, and it'll upload and show all that information for you guys. Again, I have the paper copies below me, but I've already emailed the paper copies to Jess, and she works at the FEC. She's like our liaison. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so she's uploading those, and they're supposed to be entered, and they'll be electronic, so people can actually see our FEC filings. Now, with that being said, $190,000 of that dollars came from me directly. The rest of it came from contributions.
Okay, and so just to clarify, so everyone is aware, because I'm sure many people do look for this information as we get closer to primaries. The data has been submitted to the FEC. It will be uploaded before the primary election, and you are approximately $198,000 in total donations and funding for the campaign at this time.
Yes,
we understand correctly.
As of our end-of-year filing, last year we were at $197,000 on our end-of-year filing, $7,000 being from outside contributors, $190 being from myself, right? Mm-hmm. And then, after this most recent rifle raffle that we're doing right now, we're currently at about $223,000.
Thank you. That,
it was just missing, so on this last quarterly should reflect the actual.
Okay. Thank you.
So we spoke a little bit earlier about complications to get into running for congression or a congressional office. And you and I kind of talked about this and talked about the complications and difficulties. Something that it's kind of off topic with the firearms, but I want you to share your experience on the path to this so that the viewers can actually hear a testimony from somebody that's in that position right now. You mentioned that when you had approached the Republican committee in your area and showed interest in running for a seat of such stature, that they immediately kind of shot you down in short words.
Yes. So I can go into the story.
Go ahead.
Yes. So exactly what you were talking about, Zach. So back in November 3rd, 2020, right, I was at an election party. I went to bed happy, thinking, that we were on the right page. We were moving forward as a country. Well, November 4th came around, and I woke up to the complete opposite. Right, I was aggravated. I was mad, like many Americans were, and I automatically started going into what was happening to this country. What happened to our sacred elections that made the United States the foundation of freedom for the rest of the world, right? Mm-hmm. That being said, I was like, you know what? I'm going to run for office. I need to continue my service to this country, and the best way I can serve going forward is to run for office. So I did what anyone who's a new candidate would do. I started Googling, how do you run for office? First thing is contact your party leadership and your local party leadership. Well, I did. I contacted them. I told them my name. I told them my story. I'm like, hey, I'm retired Army, right? I was part of the most elite forces in the United States. I was like, I was reconnaissance. I was like, I want to fight. I want to serve my country. I want to continue my service. Even though I was medically retired, I can still serve. I can still fight for the American people. That being said, they told me, and I quote, quotes again, just like I told you before on the phone, Zach, you should run for something petty like a school board. Or bring us $1 million. We can get you the name recognition and make sure you win. And at that point, I realized this is no longer a government of the people. This is a government of the highest dollar. Who gets the most money is how you get elected. And at that point, I said, you know what? I don't even need you guys' help anymore. I'll do it all myself. And that's what I've done. I've done it myself. And I'm running voluntarily as a voluntary representative candidate. I don't call myself a politician. I'm running for free. And I'm spending my own money, putting my money where my mouth is, right? I was the first candidate in the United States to go after the schools, honor our police, assist our veterans with the help that they need, and I'm continuing my fight every single day. And it's a hard fight. It's a long battle, and it's a northbound one because our trajectory is so high, and the fight never ends. And Michael, you ran for office before too. You know, coming from the bottom. It's a tooth and nail fight, and these politicians out there, they're pretty dirty.
Mm-hmm.
They don't play clean, and you know that, Michael. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I get phone calls 2:00 in the morning from some people. They're just like, "Hey, like, help us with this, and we'll help you with that." And I'm just like, "That's not what I'm about. I swore an oath to the Constitution to protect our God-given liberties, right, from enemies, foreign and domestic, and that's what I'm here to do, no matter what it is. I don't care what the cause is. As long as it goes with our Constitution, I'm there for it, and I'm going to fight for it."
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. I do know how difficult it can be and how some regional local parties may be a little more difficult than others. A lot of people don't get to see that behind doors, backdoor conversations. But I also wanted to ask you about something that you posted on your Facebook site. On June 8th, you had listed and stated that you look to cut the United States deficit, the spending in particular. And you cited at that time that you wanted to cut $192 billion out of the defense budget, which is $753 billion. That would be a reduction of roughly 25%. In that same posting, you also claimed that you would increase the pay of the United States soldiers by 21%. So what I would ask about that is, how would you propose to reduce the United States defense defensive budget, I should say, by 25%, yet still have enough money to increase soldiers' pay by 21%?
Yes, absolutely. I love that question. So with that being said, Michael, I'm sure you're aware of the F-35 project, right? How the U.S. government spent $7 billion on a plane that couldn't fly until about 5 years ago.
Yes.
Right. With that being said, I worked with many generals, General Michael Flynn, General Michael Kurilla, many majors and captains and lowest level Army commanders, right? Lowest level leaders in the United States Army, not just commanders, but non-commissioned officers as well, on what can we do to save money. I had a group of 19 of us. I told you the story. 19 of us that were together in Afghanistan. When I got out of the Army, we were missing $20 million worth of equipment. If there's 19 soldiers missing $20 million of equipment from the most elite unit in the United States Army, how much is the rest of the Army missing? How much is the rest of the defense missing? You know what we have? We have spendexes and we have flipples, right? Oh, we lost 5 top secret laptops. No problem. Here's a flipple saying that you lost that equipment. No accountability, right? Accountability is key. Now, with that being said, let's go back. We can cut the defense budget by, I think it was 196 that I posted. That's what I remember. But basically, we were going to lower the defense budget by $202 billion. And the way we're going to do this is cut the excess spending. That's cut off politicians from their best friends and contracting, right? Quit wasting money on ridiculous equipment that we don't need, right? And have more sustainable training, right? So when we did $202 billion a year, we basically came up with a model that makes the lowest level commander have the discretion for the most effective training for their troops, right? So that means if shooting range is your most effective training, then that's what you need to be doing. If it's battle drills, if it's flying helicopters, flying planes, that's what needs to be done, not all the excess training that the government wastes billions of dollars a year on, right? I can tell you right now, firsthand knowledge, that at the end of the year, we couldn't shoot enough rounds to get rid of them that we buried them. I buried 100,000 rounds in Ukraine of 50 caliber Link for the M2 50 caliber machine gun. I buried 100,000 rounds of that ammunition because we couldn't shoot it fast enough. And it's called a spendex. It's called a spendex at the end of the year. Basically, the commanders, they spend as much money as they can at the end of the year, so that way next year they can say, hey, we didn't have enough money to buy everything we need, so they get more money the following year. It's been doing this for, the government, the military-industrial complex, they've been doing it for the past 50 years, right? Since Vietnam ended, they started spending it, right? We've been raising the budget. Well, once getting into the numbers, right, we found out that we can raise soldiers' pay by 21%. And actually, I talked to Peggy Hubbard about this at Blexit a few months back. She said we could raise the soldiers' pay 20%. Well, for $6 billion, we can raise our soldiers' pay 21%. So not only can we have a higher morale, better training, and a better equipped military, if we quit catering to these politicians' favorite best friends over there in the contracting world, right? But the morale will be higher because soldiers will be getting paid more money, a sufficient wage. And it's really not sufficient even at 21% pay. Because the lowest level leader working 60 hours a week is only getting $552 after taxes every 2 weeks. He's making less than minimum wage. Now, with that being said, morale's higher. The military will be stronger because we'll have better quality training and we'll have better equipment. All for low cost. Sorry about that, Michael. I went in depth into that.
No, that's what we want. I just want to make sure I understand then. So if I understand you correctly, then you're looking at a reorganization of the structure, the management of the military, not a reduction of, say, equipment or personnel or closing of bases, but a restructuring of the management. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. It's a restructure of the management and a restructure of where the funds are being allocated to. So It's not funds that, hey, here's this piece of crap equipment that we're going to spend 5 times as much so we can get a better piece of equipment because you know somebody at Blackwater, you know somebody at Academy, Triple Academy. You know, it's not about that. It's about what's best for our troops, and that's what we have to focus on. And I'll tell you, what's not best for our troops is what's happening right now, and that's coming firsthand knowledge.
I understand.
Well said. That being said, how do you feel about the current push for banning or blocking is the word that they use from the Biden-Harris administration of surplus ammunition being sold to the civilization, to civilians? If you paid attention in the last couple weeks, which I'm sure you have, like the Lake City Ammunition Army Ammunitions Depot, their surplus makes up for almost 30% of the population's civilian ammunition sold by retailers. And now the Biden-Harris administration is targeting to ban them from being able to sell surplus ammunition to the American people. And from what I've researched, they want to take that ammunition and sell it to other militaries around the world.
Well, here's my question to you. It's not really a question, it's more of a statement. Isn't the government, or not the government, isn't the military funded taxpayer dollars?
Exactly, yes.
It's our ammunition to begin with. So first off, to sell the ammunition that's not being used, it's better than it being buried in a field in Ukraine. Am I wrong?
Agreed.
I buried 100,000 rounds. I could probably tell you if I pull up my old Garmin 401 I could probably tell you exactly where I buried it. You know, is it not better than that? So I get selling it, and I understand the surplus, but to sell it to foreign militaries versus the American people who paid for that money, they already paid for that ammunition. It's ridiculous. Everything, and this isn't political, this is factual. Everything that the Biden-Harris administration has done has been a complete and utter catastrophe. It's been a failure at all fronts. And to answer your question, it's ridiculous. I'm 100% against it because that's the American people's ammunition. And if we want to purchase it, we should have first dibs versus any other country.
I like that answer. I like that answer.
Before I ask my next question, I think we should clarify two things for everyone. If you came in late, I'm asking general questions about Congress and the election and the duties of a representative in the House of Representatives. And the second, and of course, Zach is asking questions about guns. But Wesley, I do want to clarify something else for those who are watching, since we've mentioned the military several times. I'm a former Marine. I think many people know that. But I know, if I understand correctly, you were in from 2010 to 2020. Can you tell us what was your position in the Army and what rank you left at?
So I retired as a staff sergeant in the United States Army. I actually joined in 2012 as a joint fires observer. My job was calling artillery and airstrikes. I worked with the 173rd, the 82nd, and 10th Special Forces. I was with the infantry the whole time. I was in reconnaissance. And then, anyways, upon getting home from Afghanistan in 2017, or 2018, my correction, 2018, I had a parachute accident. I broke my neck and my back. I spent about 3 months in Womack Army Medical Hospital and 12 months total in rehabilitation through Intrepid Spirit on Fort Bragg. Upon my ending of rehabilitation, I was no longer fit for a combat MOS to have a combat job. Well, due to some of my medical limitations, I also couldn't even sit at a desk job. So I was basically, they said, hey, we're going to retire you, you're going to get your benefits, but you're no longer a service to this country in the military aspect. So I was kind of let go, in that way. And I got out of the Army, I got my retirement, and I started looking for other ways I can assist, because I didn't want to be done. I had actually just re-enlisted about a year and a half prior for 6 years. My next duty station was going to be Alaska right before I got out. So it was kind of a sad time.
No, and I apologize to bring up bad memories, but because we are mentioning military, you're talking about your service.
Yes.
I want to make sure people are clear what that was, and thank you for the clarification. Also, you had mentioned before when you asked about the defense spending, it was correctly, and I did verify, it's $192 billion, not $196 that you had stated.
Okay, it was 192?
192.
My apologies then.
No, that's all right. It's never bad to fact check me. I don't mind it at all.
Exactly.
So asking a different question now, my actual question, which is, right now, according to KOAM News, which I believe is News Channel 6 in your region of Missouri, on May 18th, 2022, there was a poll that was released showing that 58% of Missourians reject abortion, the planned abortion ban. Now, put it in context. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, as has been leaked and is believed by many people, Missouri has a new law in place which will basically eliminate all abortions except for certain medical conditions and emergencies. And 58% of those in a poll by KOAM News stated that they thought that was too restrictive. You've stated on your websites, from what I can see, that you are a pro-life advocate, and it seems that your stance, and I want to understand it clearly, is that you are an advocate against abortion. Are there limitations, and what would you say to the 58% of those that believe the standing law of Missouri is too extreme?
Well, So there's a couple things with that.
Yes.
The most recent Missouri bill that was proposed, most recent legislation that was proposed by the Senate, banned ectopic pregnancies. Ectopic pregnancies would not always, but potentially kill the mother, and being pregnant is not a life sentence. So to ban that, to ban an abortion on ectopic pregnancies is completely wrong. To answer that portion of it. Now, I'm 100% pro-life, and I'll tell you why. I was adopted as a young child, right? To my family. They're my family, right? I had the privilege and the honor to serve this country. I had the privilege and the honor to walk this earth, to understand and live my life. I don't know what a baby who's been aborted feels, right? I believe in the reincarnation and everything else, but I don't know what a baby who wasn't born and never had the honor or the privilege to walk this earth and to be an American, let alone an American, right? But to be able to do something with their life, like I've done with mine. I own businesses. I'm retired Army. I got to do so much in my young life that it just kills me to think that there's people out there that think the best option for their child is abortion. Right. So for the 58%, I can tell you I stand with you for ectopic pregnancies, but I don't stand with you for the murder of innocent lives.
Fair enough. That's a clear answer, and I thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the question.
So as Senate and Congress and all of these, I'll just say leftists, are proposing further gun legislation. We had a couple posts that we posted last night, and I'll let Mike actually kind of detail what the posts were, as he was the one who posted them and found them, and I've yet to actually go through and read them to dissect them myself. But obviously the attack on gun rights right now. HR 7910. One of the things that we kind of preach to our viewers is to look for the wording of the introductions of the bills, to look for what they say that might give you a sense of direction of where it goes in the future if it does pass. HR 7910, the biggest thing in all of the wording of that bill that scares me as an American citizen, that is pro 2A, is the way they use the word framework. This is the framework, is a statement for meaning this is what we're going to build on if this passes. So what do you think about HR 7910? Since the shootings, since the Buffalo shooting, since the Uvalde shooting, the subway shooting, and now we have this introduction of HR 7910, Protect the Kids Act. Do you feel or believe that anything in that bill protects the kids?
So I'm familiar with the bill. I will be honest with you, I have not read all of 70. That being said, with the framework portion of that bill and to protect the kids, from what I have read, which is basically the summary report of that bill, it's the exact opposite of what it's called. And if you're familiar with any of the other bills that have been recently proposed from the left, they name something like the CARES Act or Build Back Better or all this stuff. They name it something to get attention and to get people excited about something that is actually the exact opposite. That being said, I've seen some legislation that was supposed to be going to be passed with 7910, and I am very shocked that you have some Republicans that are willing to jump forward with this, and I'm very against it, because the best thing for the kids, right, the best thing for the American people is to stick with what the founders intended, right, because that's the true framework. Read the federal papers, read the Constitution, read the Declaration. That's the framework of this country, and it's not a living document. The Constitution, the Declaration, they're written in stone.
Mm-hmm.
Those are stone-written documents by our founders. These people who were brilliant, and me and you talked about it before, Zach, between James Madison and the others, these people were brilliant at the time that they were alive, and what we have right now in our country is people are trying to twist what was created, and make it to fit their agenda, fit their narrative. And again, I will have to study up on 7910 before I can answer on that. But from what I read, it's the exact opposite of what it's titled as. Because they title stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. Mike.
Yes.
The legislation, or the proposed legislation that you posted on our page last night. Could you just touch base on that real quick? Or this morning, I mean?
This morning, okay, so you're talking about the bipartisan safer communities bill, which is just horrendous, folks. It is basically a hodgepodge of ideas. It by itself doesn't really do anything but spending. So it would incentivize states to spend, well, it would incentivize from the federal government to the states that the United States government is going to pay states to create a red flag framework or law, legislation, and then it would also pay for enactment or red flag actions by those states. So the 19 states that have, or 18 states plus DC that have red flag laws in place, they would be paid for maintaining that. In other words, maintaining that list, that roster of individuals there, and new states would be encouraged to create a law and to put people on their list as well. That's one of the major proponents of it, and I think is a rather big problem. In addition to that, there is the question, it is looking to add funding to the Safe Schools and Citizen Education. That currently has funding already of approximately $382 million. It is actually spending in the year 2022 11% of its funding, about $40 million. And this Bipartisan Safer Communities Act will add an additional $1 billion, $200 billion of which, $200 million of which would be added this year. So it would have $582 million in funding. They've actually used 11. So they are overfunding it for it to underperform. The third major thing to highlight is the burn grants that are in this, where it states that the funding of these red flag actions must include a pre-deprivation due process rights. By definition of red flag laws, that the charges, the investigation, the warrant are all done without knowledge of the subject, and you are not informed until the warrant comes to your door, then the bill itself contradicts itself. So those are the three major points of the bill to bring up.
And as we know, anytime the government steps in and offers funding for anything, it always comes with a catch. And with red flag laws specifically, we've already went into that prior, but the government wants to take firearms from those they wish to oppress. I say that all the time, right? Senator Roy Chipp, he said the same thing, right? Like, look back over the last 120 years, 80 million people were murdered from this world, right? Not our country, but throughout the entire world over the past 120 years after the government came after their guns. And the United States government is terrified of veterans having guns. I mean, you talked about this earlier, Zach. With the new red flag laws and mental health issues that are associated with them, veterans will lose their right to own firearms, and the government is terrified that we have the right to own firearms because they spent tons of money training us how to fight, how to shoot, how to do what we were trained to do, and they're terrified that when a tyrannical government steps over, that us, United States citizens, and specifically us veterans who take up arms, they're not a match to us. And they're terrified of it. And that's why to throw in the mental health issues with their red flag legislation, right, to basically ban, discriminate against veterans specifically. We talked about this before, the numbers, 58% of Iraqi and Afghanistan war veterans, the young fighters who are still capable, right, have mental health issues. 78% of them, 78% of that 58% self-medicate with drug and alcohol use. The government is terrified that what they trained them for, what they bred, will overthrow them if the time ever came, and that was what had to happen. I'm not saying that's what we'll do, but if a tyrannical government wants to take control and impede on my family and my freedom of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you best believe I'm going to take them. Right? And they're terrified of that because they want to associate veterans and or not even radical, but right wingist Republicans, conservatives as crazy. So that way, my neighbor, let's just say her name's Deborah. It's not. Deborah can call in on me and have my guns taken away, even if I don't even talk to her.
Okay. Let me ask. I'm not exactly the time that we have, so I want to combine two questions. They're related. Partially in dealing with the budget, partially looking towards if you are elected as the 2nd District of Missouri, the representative. So I see in your writings that you wish to you want to balance the budget. One of the key things, separate of the Defense Department, one of the key things to be able to do that requires that something must be cut. There's no other way to reduce it at the size that we are at, the interest rates as they are. We would have to cut something. So I would ask you, one, what would you cut? You can name one or two of the top things that you would try to remove. And at the same time, let me ask you, every member is expected to introduce bills or to stand behind certain bills. What would be the top 3 bills that you would look to introduce either within the first 100 days or the first year that you are elected?
Great question. So as for the budget cut, we need to start with Congress. If Congress wants to spend more money than they have, that's where we start at. We start at cutting their budgets, right? The $178,000 a year salaries, the $1.7 billion per congressional representative. It's ridiculous to hire 18 paid staff members, and they gave themselves a raise, right, in the CARES Act so they could hire security. They were saying defund the police. They were saying take your guns, hiring armed guards, and they gave themselves a pay raise in order to do that. Right? It went from hiring 12 paid staff to 18 so they could hire security. So that would be the first cut that we need to make, right? We need to look into our FBI budget, our CIA budget, because there was a coup that was planned behind the previous president, right, behind his back, that we were spending billions of dollars a year to investigate, right? Congress was spending billions of dollars a year to investigate, and this isn't Trump, this, that, or the other, but we had government entities working against the president behind his back. The leader of the free world, we had people that taxpayers were spending money on investigating him behind his back. And we're not talking a little bit, we're talking $40 million a year that we were spending to investigate our leader of the free world, literally. So that's where I would start. I would start with our 3-letter agencies, I'd start with our defense, and I would start with Congress. But the number one priority would be Congress. I'm willing to work for free, right? That should be an honorary title to be a congressman or a representative of the United States of America. It should be an honorary position that you do to represent the people. Now it's all about money, and that's exactly what the founders didn't want. So I would start with Congress, defense, 3-letter agencies, where I would start at. As for your second question, I have multiple bills. Election integrity, right, was one of the big ones that I want to push for. Free and fair elections are the cornerstone of our republic. It is literally what we are here to prove. This is an experiment. Our country was built on an experiment of freedom, and that's what we are, right? But it starts with free and fair elections, and that is election day, not 3 weeks, 4 weeks prior to 5 months after. We still have ballots coming in. It's ridiculous. So election day, paper ballot system, because obviously everything electronic. I mean, look at you. Before we even got on here, Zach, we literally couldn't even get the system to work, right? It's not just this, but between censorship and hacking, I mean, our pipeline was hacked back in March of 2021. gas skyrocketed because Russia hacked into our pipeline, our East Coast pipeline, right? So paper ballots, election day, and free and fair elections, right? Voter ID is a major principle of that. You think the Democrats are letting, and I can't just say Democrats, but you think that us, a nation, is allowing all these illegals to flood in for no reason? They're looking at 2024's presidential race. They're looking at 2022. To allow 258,000 people into this country last month wasn't just because of nothing. We have the largest caravan of illegals coming to this country right now. 500,000 people are on their way up from Mexico to the border, the largest caravan in the history. And we're going to let them in. This isn't for anything other than the fact that an election year is coming, and they need more votes, right? So, free and fair elections. I have a prisoner rights reestablishment bill, right? My bill basically, you laughed at it, Michael.
I was going to ask about that.
So this is a bill that I came up with independently. Basically, so I was sitting there talking to a veteran. I'm going to go short story. I was talking to a veteran at the VFW. He was pulled over for marijuana back in '78, right? A lot of marijuana. He got busted, put in prison for intent to distribute or intent to sell, right? Felony possession with intent to sell. And ever since then, he's had a felony, hasn't been able to own a firearm, hasn't been able to vote, hasn't been able to do a lot of things, right? My bill that I'm proposing would allow felons with nonviolent felonies to have all their rights back and their records sealed. And what I mean by that is nonviolent felonies, they can get jobs. 1 in 5 that get out of prison are back in prison within 1 year. And 40% of them are back in prison within 5 years. We need to stop the cycle, the vicious cycle we have, and it affects minorities more, right? And not only that, the 80% of the world's prisoner population is here in the United States. How can we stop this? Well, prisoners can't get good jobs when they get out, right? Felons, and I'm saying nonviolent felonies, of course. I want to reiterate that because I've got asked about it a lot. Nonviolent felons, they can't get a good job. They paid their debt to society. So say I robbed a convenience store, not armed robbery, but I robbed a convenience store, right, when I was 18 years old. Got a felony, went to prison, came out. I can't get a job anywhere, except for maybe a convenience store, but they think I'm going to rob them, so I can't get that. So what I propose is the records are sealed, even from police. The only person that can open their records is a court, right? So like the 3-strike rule, stuff like that, which we can get into a long topic about that later. But we could seal their records. So if you get pulled over, it's no bad traffic stop anymore. Oh, he's got 2 felonies. We're going to arrest him. Oh, I smell marijuana in his car. We're going to search him and take away his 4th Amendment right? And try to find anything we can. Police don't know that you're a felon. Police don't know you've been arrested. You can get a job, your record's sealed, and you have the right to vote for the president because you served your debt to society. You have a right to own a firearm. That's my proposal with the Prisoners' Rights Reestablishment. I think it's a very good one, and it can actually benefit the United States and save taxpayers a lot of money each year.
Oh, yes. And you kind of touched base on one of the questions that I wanted to ask about immigration and election integrity. So the other night on our show, we were discussing, and I haven't got around to it, but I need to actually put these documents up for everybody on the page to see. We found some documentation linking all the way back to the 60s and 70s discussing strategic placement of immigrants and refugees in cities around the country. Basically shedding light on the long game of the Democratic Party to create voters for the next election cycles. So as you know, if you've paid attention throughout history, every time there's a serious control or a serious fluctuation in power to the left, the border is always a serious issue. It's like they just open the borders right up and let everybody come in. And then we place them all over the country. Place them in New York City, place them in Erie, Pennsylvania, place them in Houston, Texas. We put them in all these cities and set them up on these programs. And the Democrats are made to look like heroes to all of these people because they give them money, they give them, access to getting a house, to getting a car. And basically giving them the start to the pursuit of happiness, to live the American dream. So to the Democrat Party, it's makes them look like heroes. So at any time, as soon as they're able to vote on elections, when they become a legal citizen, obviously they run right out and vote for the people that helped them get here. That being said, how do you feel about the states that are starting to jump in line with New York and California on allowing non-citizen immigrants to vote in local elections?
It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. These illegal immigrants don't even vote in their own elections. And I mean, we can go into illegal immigration as much as you want, but for me specifically, these laws were passed just to benefit the Democrats. It's the same as them going to the cemetery to campaign, right? They're bringing people in, and this administration specifically has made every single city in America a border city. It's one of the top 3 issues in my district, in the heart of the United States, in St. Louis, Missouri. The top 3 issues is illegal immigration, because they're busing them here, they're busing them there. I'm not against immigrants. I am against breaking the law, and breaking the law is coming into this country illegally, right? And we can go. I mean, there's so much to go into when you talk about illegal immigration. You talk about drugs. You talk about human trafficking. You talk about the fact that the cost, the burden to taxpayers. There's a lot to go into it. But with that being said, voting specifically with illegal immigration, it should not happen. That's why we must require IDs to vote, in order to prevent illegal immigrants from coming into this country, being bought out by Democrats, and voting in our elections.
So when we, to kind of wrap up on that topic, when we were witnessing what happened in 2019, 2020, up to the presidential election, all the way up to the inauguration and after, post-inauguration, voting integrity has really sunk. People's faith in the integrity of voting has really sunk. A lot of people, myself included, have our serious doubts in election integrity, in the electronic voting machines, whatever company they're from. It doesn't matter. It has been proven time and time again that if something has an exterior connection to any type of internet or electricity, it can be changed and altered. Anything connected to the internet can be hacked. So it's the stuff that happened between Trump and Biden has raised a lot of questions. And the Republican Party, within the first few months after the inauguration, were pushing and requesting that we do away with all this mail-in ballots, with all these electronic voting machines. And we got shoved back against and told that it would cost too much, and that the systems that would need put in place for each state to create voter IDs would be too high, too regulatory. They would have to hire a whole new bureaucracy to maintain and control it. But what really baffles me is we have photo ID for everything. Photo IDs for libraries, photo IDs for driving, photo IDs for gun licenses. We have photo IDs for Sam's Club shopping carts. Okay, so why would it be so hard to take these electronic voting machines out of play and create a state-issued voter ID that you scan when you walk up to the ballot and submit your paper ballot? And once your ID is scanned, you are no longer, if you try to walk into another ballot station and scan that ID, you get charged for voting fraud, for trying to submit a second vote. Is that so far out of affordability question in your eyes?
I'll tell you right now, it's actually cheaper to print paper ballots, right, than it would be to pay to have machines in every single voting precinct in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these machines aren't used multiple times, right? These machines are used, put away in a storage unit, and then a newer, upgraded machine comes a couple years, 2-4 years later in an election. By the time you pay $3-4 grand for this machine, you could have printed off, 1 million ballots for the same price.
Do you agree with mail-in ballots?
Absolutely not. I believe in absentee ballots. There's certain
absentee ballots.
certain things that people have to get a mail-in ballot in that case. But ballot harvesting, right? Mail-in ballots specifically, just because, oh, I'm under the weather, I'm not going to go vote. Well, then guess what? You lost your vote.
Okay. Well, kind of, you know, it. A lot of employers across the country in 2019 were actually encouraging their employees to go out and vote.
Some of these companies were paying their employees to vote.
Yeah, the company I worked for paid us 4 hours and let us go 4 hours early. Now, I'm sure not every company across the country was like that. It wasn't a benefit for everybody. But what really baffles me is the mail-in ballots. I had already voted, and I had already submitted my vote. And 3 or 4 weeks later, we were having a lot of issues in our hometown with mail. Our mail was running 3 and 4 months behind for almost a year. I ended up getting 5 mail-in ballots to my house after I'd already voted. There's only 2 adults living in the house.
And that's why Pennsylvania had the numbers that they showed. I mean, let's be honest about it. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania.
Well, my thing is, it's
Arizona,
who verifies those. You know, I could have very easily.
The same people who brought them in at 4 o'clock in the morning in briefcases.
There you go.
I mean,
Go ahead, Mike.
We all know.
Go ahead, Mike.
I went down to Maricopa County during their audit, their Cyber Ninja audit, and watched the way that they did it. They had it live on Facebook. They had it live on TV, right, for the entire audit. They found enough to overturn Arizona. And I'm sure if they were to do the same thing in Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin, Georgia, they would have found the same thing.
Well, how do you feel about Texas right now? Texas is taking a really hard stance against voting integrity, and Texas is demanding 2 different states to overturn their elections because they claim to have substantial evidence that the election was stolen and that Biden did not legitimately win. And now they're talking in their own political offices within the state about exercising their right to secede from the union.
Hey, what I can tell you right now, and you guys can take this how you want, this country, since Obama was in office, right, has not been a union. We have not been united to fight together for anything since 9/11, right?
Right.
And with that, Obama was the most divisive president that we've ever had in this country. And I can give my personal belief on why. I'm not going to do that right now. However, Trump started mending relations with states. I truly believe he did, right? Closing our border, lowering taxes, making us energy independent, brought this country together. Now, the radical left the entire time hated him. They'll never want to be part of this country because they believe it's better in Africa. I want you to go to Rwanda, Uganda, wherever you have to go in Africa, wherever you want to go. I've been to 44 countries. Not one country. I've been everywhere from a third world country, everywhere from Thailand to Ukraine, all the way to Italy and back to the United States, Mexico, and Canada.
Okay.
There is not a country in this world that I've been to that has a better way of life than the United States. So I urge people, if they truly believe that they can have a better life somewhere, they should go try it. See the struggles. See why people in Italy live with their parents till they're 30. Why the cost of living so high. Yeah, they have like a nap time in the middle of the day called Rimpozo. That's great. But that's why they're at work until 7 p.m., 8 p.m., right? Because they have a 2-hour break in the middle of their day to go home and hang out and eat food and take a nap. It's not as great a life as you get here in the United States. And on top of that, you can be whatever you want to be here. I never wanted to run for office. I mean, look at me. I'm here talking to you guys. I'm running for office in the United States Congress because that's what God gave us. God gave us the rights here in this country. Our founders fought for it, right? 3% of this nation stood up against the British, right? And fought for us to be able to come here, talk about our feelings, let everyone enjoy it. And it's a shame to see where our country's going. and that we, the American people, 3% is all it takes to fight off problems that we're having. 10 million people, though, nowadays is 3%. And I'm not a insurrectionist or let's fight the government kind of person, but you fight the government by electing new representatives. If you continue the path of voting the same person in office every single time and expecting a different result, you're insane.
Exactly. Go ahead, Mike.
I have a very interesting question. Now, I looked at, as best I could, the Wesley for Congress website. I've looked over a good portion of your Facebook postings, and I did not see something, but I need to give background. So, on September 1st of 2021, Joe Biden spoke to the American people and stated that there were 100 Americans that were forgotten, abandoned, left behind, however you want to word it, in Afghanistan, where you had served in our military. 3 days later, it was stated that it was 85. Then it was stated that there were 249. It was then 6. Then this year it was 99. We believe, according to the United States Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, that there were potentially 9,000 American citizens that were knowingly left in Afghanistan to this day. There are currently, I believe, 2, possibly 3 American citizens that are being held by Russia. At this time, there are multiple, it's unclear the exact number, American citizens being unjustly held by China and will not be released. I did not see in any of the documentation, or maybe that I missed it, it may have been earlier than I was able to research, or on one of the websites that are being transferred, but I did not see any comment from you about any one of these situations or the overall international policy that created these scenarios. So either picking one of them or all of them, can you address those issues?
Yeah, so actually, I posted a video, which is probably why you didn't see it. You probably didn't watch the video. I think it was a 5-minute video that was posted roughly around that time frame, where I came out and I addressed people on my thoughts of the catastrophic exit of Afghanistan and the fact that we were leaving American citizens behind. And I believe at that point in time, I said there was 1,000, because I had troops that I knew personally that I had their phone numbers to, that said that there was 1,000 left behind when they were leaving, right, Afghanistan. As Zach knows, one of my really good friends, he was one of the 13 that was killed, Ryan Naus, right, served with him in 17-18 in Afghanistan. Anyways, that being said, Afghanistan was a hard exit for me, and I lost a lot, I would say a lot from it, because it was really hard, and it wasn't just me, it was all Afghan war veterans. Now, with that, to leave American citizens there, to leave Afghanistan the way we left, was devastating, to say the least. Like, I remember crying at nighttime. Like, everything we fought for, all my friends that I lost, was for nothing. It was all for what? To give the Taliban weapons and ammo, and helicopters, planes, and all this other stuff. That being said, to address your specific question about that, yes, I did address it in a posting, a video. Now, with that, the president also stated prior to the Afghanistan withdrawal that nobody, well, after the Afghanistan withdrawal, and nobody would have ever seen this coming, blah, blah, blah. There was a CIA report that was released on May 31st, 2021. May 31st, right? We left Afghanistan in July 6th, 2021, right? In the middle of the night. On May 31st, the CIA released a report.
Clarification. You mean Bagram Air Force Base, which would be July 15th of 2020.
Oh, July 15th. I was thinking probably 16th, but anyways, July 15th. We left Bagram. That's what I was talking about. Bagram was the big. That was our base that we had there. That was our final frontier, if you must, in Afghanistan. In the middle of the night. So July 15th. Anyways, on May 31st, the CIA released a report stating that 2/3 of the country of Afghanistan was overrun by the Taliban, including Jalalabad, which was abandoned well in advance. Right, that might have been what it was, June 6th. Jalalabad was left as well in the middle of the night, but no one made a big deal out of it. It wasn't Bagram, right? And that's where I was specifically in 1718, Jalalabad. So 2/3 of the country was already overrun. There was 5 provinces left that were under Afghanistan control at the time that we pulled out of Afghanistan. So for anyone in their right mind, out of, I'm probably wrong here, but I think there's 27 provinces in Afghanistan. I don't know the exact number.
I believe it's 27.
22 of them to be overrun. 2/3 of the country's overrun, and you're going to tell me that you had no idea that the Taliban was going to take over the rest of the country?
Well,
and the CIA is telling you, because they have whatever people think the CIA does, they're secret squirrels. I will tell you firsthand. They had people in Afghanistan telling us, hey, this is the battlefield reports, like, hey, Taliban just took over this. Taliban just took over this. And you're telling me you had no idea?
well, to chime in on this just a little bit, and like I told you earlier, these guys that are with me are more of the political exploratory individuals. I'm more of the Second Amendment, the Constitution, the Declaration, and all but to shed some light on a question I have regarding this, after the disgusting excuse of what we call the Afghanistan withdrawal, the Biden administration, Kamala Harris office, and a lot of other people on the left were immediately pointing their fingers at Trump, because what their argument was that the Trump administration had set up and negotiated a date of withdrawal, at which point we must be out of Afghanistan or there would be repercussions. So Biden gave the authority, gave the order, exercised this whole withdrawal from Afghanistan over in the middle of the night, leaving a bunch of people behind, leaving completely full arsenals of firearms, ammunition, helicopters, planes, tanks, UAVs, everything. And immediately started blaming the Trump administration for saying that it was his fault because this was already all in place and already all planned, and we had to make that date.
If Biden eats hot sauce and it burns his butt coming out, he blames Trump. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's ridiculous. They will blame Trump on anything that they can ever do. But Trump did negotiate, right? And I can tell you, from my personal experience, I worked hand in hand with the Taliban in Afghanistan. You know why? Because they hated ISIS more than they hated us, which was like, we're talking like this much. But that this much was willing to make them narcs. They flipped so fast to be narcs. They would say, "Hey, we smell these people over here," like, and they would tell us, That being said, the Afghanistan withdrawal was not Trump's fault. And here's the other thing: there was a strategy that was appropriate to leave Afghanistan, and leaving in the middle of the night with not even telling the Afghan commander that we were leaving is not the strategy. That was not in the plan, to leave weapons, whatever they are. I don't care if it's a rock launcher, if it's just a slingshot for rocks. We shouldn't have left nothing for the Taliban, because, as Michael stated, right, China's already came into Afghanistan. They're buying Afghanistan land for precious minerals so that the U.S. can go buy the minerals from them, so we can build our own vehicles.
Well, that was another part of this discussion that I wanted to chime in on, because we had spoke earlier of my friends in military background, and I've had a lot of friends in military. I've had a lot of acquaintances through this page that are former military. I personally know of a Marine that was across seas for, I don't know how many tours. It was 3 or 4 tours that he did over there. He swears up and down and tells everybody that he could prove it, that we were actually being used as armed security details for Chinese and for Russian mining and drilling operations of precious materials, precious minerals. Now, I don't know how much of his story is true, and I've never been able to find any actual substantial evidence or factual documentation to verify this, but he claims that his last tour over there, he was nothing but a glorified security guard walking a perimeter of a mining operation where the Chinese were in there mining for lithium and nickel.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the case. Now, I'm sorry, I got to jump over to Michael's actual question, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Michael's actual question about China and Russia having U.S. Servicemen, U.S. citizens, not servicemen, citizens. The United States should not be negotiating. We should be going and getting our own. What I mean by that, I'm sure you remember Bo Bergdahl.
Oh, yes.
I hate that traitor more than anything in the entire world. He's the only person since Vietnam to get a dishonorable discharge.
Yeah.
All he got was a demotion in rank and a dishonorable discharge.
Yeah.
Bo Bergdahl cost American citizens over $10 million. And I'm saying $10 million, not even in searching fees, looking for his traitor butt, right? Traitor butt, looking for him in Afghanistan. But he cost 6 service members their lives, right?
I'm very familiar with it, yes.
And Bo went on, Barack Obama brought him home like he's some hometown hero. We're going to train five officer, Al-Qaeda officials for Bo Bergdahl. That's not what we do here in the United States. We do not negotiate with terrorists, and we do not negotiate for someone who's a traitor. I would have told him kill him. That's what I would have said to Bo Bergdahl, right? Because Bo Bergdahl was a traitor to this country. He got U.S. citizens killed. He cost taxpayers $10 million. And you know what he got? He got nothing. He got demotion in rank.
Yeah.
He was over in the Taliban giving them probably secrets for 5 years. We don't know. And so anyways, going to the specifics of Americans being hostage, we should be doing everything we can to go and save those American citizens. Doesn't matter. I don't care what they are. I don't care if they're Chinese and the Chinese took them. Are they Americans? Because if they're Americans, we don't leave a man behind. We go and get them, and we fight like hell until we do. And that's what needs to be happening right now. But instead, we're sitting here falling off bikes and eating ice cream. That's what we're doing.
Let me follow that up. It's related to that, and I thank you for your answer. And yes, I've spoken extensively about Bo Bergdahl at the time and since. But obviously, we know that China has been making many very vocal claims about Taiwan. The United States has had an agreement with Taiwan, a mutual defense pact for that nation. China has denied it. There has been mixed messaging from the Biden-Harris administration. But some do believe, and according to the most recent statements from China, China stated 2 weeks ago that Taiwan is their property and that they will defend it to the death. Given that scenario, it is possible that China may try to invade Taiwan at some time in the near future. The United States is in a tricky position. Therefore, Congress would have to speak about sending American troops potentially to Taiwan and to fight and defend it. Is that something that you would support, or is that something you would not support? At this time, given the information we have today, obviously, information may change between now and that moment.
I mean, first I'd have to look more into it. Now, Taiwan and China, I know that they've been battling over land sovereignty, and what I have to say with that is there's many people who we, the United States, consider allies that are not allies. I know how it would play out, and by that I mean the administration we currently have will cater to China. But Taiwan is an ally, and me personally, I don't think the United States should get involved.
Okay.
And it's not a dog eat dog world, but it's the same thing with Ukraine. Ukraine's an ally of the United States, but we are not the police force for the entire world. People at some point have to stand up and fight for their freedom, just like the United States did back in 1776, 1774. My bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it is. That's how it works. You know, and I'm just sick of seeing our service members die on frivolous battles that don't involve the United States.
Okay.
That's why I'm against going into Ukraine to help them. I've been to Ukraine. I've been there to help them. I've trained their soldiers. I was the first unit to go to Ukraine since World War II. Back in 2014, when Crimea was invaded, I went there and trained the Ukrainian army to fight the Russian separatists in Crimea.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, they're not interested in what we're selling. The Ukrainian army was not interested in what we had to offer. They had an interest in the guns and the ammo and everything else we brought. They didn't have an interest in what we were actually teaching them. It's because they're bought out, just like the Biden-Harris administration. And China owns Biden, and so whatever China wants, Biden's going to get. And if that's Taiwan, he'll put a nice price tag on it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
Speaking on Ukraine and on China, you've mentioned China owning Biden. Two small questions kind of crammed into one. Presidential candidate running for office claims that his family has, he's never had any dealings with his kids and what they've done. But there is what seems to be some very non-transparent evidence that the Biden family has been profiting off Ukraine for years.
An organized crime unit, the Biden organized crime family.
The second part of that question is back to guns for a moment. There is proof and evidence that Hunter Biden lied on a NICS check to own to possess a firearm, which is a felony.
Yes.
So, at what point do we, the American people, and the other branches, the other executive branches of office, start stepping in and saying transparency is required?
When the American people, right, when me, you, Michael, everyone else decides to elect real representatives, people who represent their country, not to get fame, fortune, or recognition, right? We get real representatives that get the answers to the questions that the American people are asking, like transparency, like accountability. That's the biggest thing that this country's lost in government is accountability. Biden literally did a quid pro quo in Ukraine on video. He wanted $1 billion. I said, if you fire the prosecutor, I'll give him $1 billion. What do you know? 6 hours later, the prosecutor was fired. Literally a quid pro quo. Biden crime family, Hunter Biden, it's the same thing. These people are bought out. The Department of Justice Biden owns, in my personal opinion, owns the Department of Justice. The Democratic Party, the Democratic National Convention owns the Department of Justice. They investigated Hunter's laptop. They told us it was a coup, that it was Russia misinformation, right?
Yep.
And it came out that it's real. The FBI reported that the laptop's real. Rudy Giuliani, he was called crazy. Trump was called he was called everything. I don't even know what to call him. Yeah. Specific instance. But these people were made a fool of, when in reality the American people were the fool for believing anything that came out of Biden's mouth.
So something that we talked about a couple of times last week, and Mike will be able to reference this a lot better than I will. Am I still sounding all right? I'm not robot-y or anything, am I? Okay. constituents to representatives. One of our other members actually brought up the analytics and kind of gave us a really good example of how many representatives there should be in each state based off the numbers of what they should be increasing per population. Running for Congress, running to be a representative, do you feel that we should have more representatives for the states so that maybe the constituents have a better chance of actually engaging with these representatives, and the representatives stand a much better chance of actually dealing with the constituents? Because right now we have states where there's one representative for 900,000 people.
My state specifically, there's a yes and no to that answer. No, because representatives should realize who their special interests really are, and that's their constituents. But I can tell you, I talk to hundreds, if not, well, okay, hundreds, I'm not going to lie. I talk to hundreds of people a day. Right? I was going to say hundreds, if not thousands, but like, it's hundreds of people a day that I talk to. Whether it's email, Facebook, engaging, and that's just me, myself. Now, I have 5 people that I have on my staff, too. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes stuff gets overlooked because, you know, if it's like a comment like, oh, we love you, and they respond, I love you, they don't need to call me and tell me, hey, by the way, I just talked to this person, right? You know, so there's stuff that I overlook or that gets overlooked, but there's a lot that can be done as one representative for a district that was, my district was 1.2 million people. Now it went back down to about 900,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they redistrict. That's my no, that there is more that can be done if representatives represent their constituents and believe in their constituents before their special interests. Like Ann Wagner, my opponent, could, you know, the incumbent, she could have reached a lot more people if she wasn't in Davos, Switzerland, rubbing elbows with Bill Gates and George Soros. Right? She could have actually engaged with her constituents at that point. Now, the yes portion of that is people's voices need to be heard. They are sick and tired of not being heard. And people like yourself, and you mentioned it earlier, with voting, we've given up. You know, our votes don't matter, is what I hear all the time. And it's because people do not engage with it. So if we had more representatives, yes, we could have more engagement. But how many representatives are we adding? Are we adding double, triple, quadruple the amount that we have now? Because think my district of 900,000 people, if we added 4 people to represent that 900,000, you're still, you know, 225,000 people.
I wish Mr. Marshall was actually here to go over the numbers, because unless Mike, you know the numbers.
The average decimal district is 720,000 people on average.
Hi, Peggy.
Are a little bit different because of the size of state density of a specific city.
But
it was just something.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Even at that, you're still talking one person representing 176,000 people, or 175,000 people. That's a lot of people for one person to try to
720,000.
Well, I mean, it's 720,000 for the district. I'm saying
Yes.
if we were to divide it in 4,
Well, yes,
right,
yes.
you're up to almost 125 or 175,000 people for one person. That's a lot of conversations to make people feel like they're heard. So at what point is it one representative for every 1,000 people, every 20,000, 100,000? You know, it's real difficult to tell.
It's just one of those things that's kind of a hot topic right now, because one of the biggest things with the people of society is that they feel out of touch with their representatives. They feel out of touch with their governors. So a lot of people have been coming to us, and Mike Marshall, he's unfortunately not here tonight. We had a nice long talk about this the other night on a show, and a lot of people feel that it would be very beneficial if we were to have followed that, if we were to verify that it's been ratified, and that we were to follow that, so that we had more representatives per the population. It would thin out some of the weight on the representative, because you'd have, you know, half or a quarter or a third of the constituents. It would allow them to kind of relate more to people in a smaller district instead of such a large district.
I can tell you right now, Democrats would never go for it.
No, that was the other part of the conversation that we had, because it would make it a lot more difficult for any corporation, lobbyist group, or anything to buy out House of Representatives. There's so much more diversity in opinions that it would be so much harder to buy it out.
Well, Republicans would have a supermajority all the time if that was the case, because there is no way. 75% of the United States, based on landmass, and that's kind of what we're going for as well, they have, they're Republican. And so, people for instance, if you were to split off where I live in a Democratic area. Whenever I decided to run for Congress, I moved into the heart of the Democrats in my district. So I was like, I'm gonna go talk to these guys every day. Right. Yep. These are the people I want to live with. So with that being said, my small section of Democrats, right, that I live around, are what keeps this district so low. It's a high population in a small area. If you're taking that and you're dividing my district into 4, 5, 6 representatives for that one area, then now we're having 5 votes Republican to the 1 Democrat that lives here in my specific area. Which is why Missouri's House has a supermajority in the House and Senate of Republicans, right? That's why we have that. And if you look at their state legislative bodies, that's kind of how it would look in Congress if it were to go to where we have more representatives to represent the people. That's why I'm telling you, there's no way Democrats would go for that.
Well, I don't think it would ever pass, and I'm honestly one of the people that's always been a hard no for it, because I'm one of the people that's like, less government is better government. And I'm very against the bureaucracies. We spoke about this earlier, how it's run like an umbrella corporation, how they pass responsibility down the food chain. But anyway, I think Mike had something he wanted to say. He was shaking his pen.
I'm sorry, you can go.
Yes. Well, no, just wanted to bring up, I do have a final planned question. I should mention, though, in 2018, or is that, I forget how many years that I've been doing this now, I can tell you that you're in the top 5% of people that my prepared questions were exhausted. That almost never happens. Almost no one makes it long enough to be able to answer every question that I have. And I usually am pretty detailed.
You got a lot of detailed questions. I was very surprised with your research that you did on them, too.
Trust me, I'm known for being fair, but tough.
Yes.
But I do have one final prepared question that I want to ask you. And this goes to, on June 21st, 2022, it's an ongoing study. It's from Civics. And there is a poll which currently states that for the state of Missouri, 43% of the population believe that there should be more gun control. Now, we've talked back and forth about gun control, your personal views on it, and somewhat the national views. My specific question is, as someone who stands by the Second Amendment based on the idea that every American has a right to own a firearm, unless I have misunderstood your words so far, then what would you say to those other 43% of Missourians who are saying, no, but we should have more restriction?
I would ask them to tell me who's going to come enforce it. Who's going to enforce the regulations and restrictions?
That's kind of like what you said.
It's not going to be the people without guns that are going to enforce it. They're not going to come enforce it.
See, I know you said that at the city council meeting, and I did see that. Now, you have a video of you speaking before your local city council. It was 1 minute, 37 seconds. You said very much the same thing. But I'm wondering if someone, we're just trying to pick an independent or a libertarian, not necessarily a progressive, not necessarily a Democrat, someone in the middle of the road comes, they're speaking to you and they go, but I think that would be a great idea to have more gun control. Just like you may reach out and speak to someone if elected in Congress, and they would ask you, and you're talking to, let's not say Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but not even a Hakeem Jeffries, but someone in the middle. And they would ask you, they want more gun control. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, there's different. So to get into that, you'd have to ask what gun control are they proposing, and the reason I say that is because there's differences in gun control legislation, right? For instance, if they came at me and said we should, keep Senate Bill 2070, right? The Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990, which was again amended in 1996, I would say, I'm sorry, but I disagree with that because the most attacked and most targeted areas are gun-free school zone acts. Or not even gun-free school zone, but gun-free areas are the most attacked, right? So, I mean, it's a very difficult question because the way I would really say it to these individuals would be something that I'm not going to say on here because, it's on Facebook. But it's very difficult to say exactly what I would tell them. But the founders gave us our God-given right. Well, God gave us our God-given right to own firearms as long as we were a citizen of the United States. Our founders fought for it, right? And they didn't fight for it for us to go clay pigeon shooting, right? They didn't fight for us to go hunting. They fought for it in case a tyrannical government got ambitious and tried to take over the God-given rights of the American people.
Okay.
So I stand for God in this country. I stand for the Constitution. I took an oath to the Constitution. I will take an oath again in Congress for the Constitution. And I'll tell you right now, there's no quid pro quo, there's no negotiation when it comes to gun rights for the American people. So, I mean, it's hard to say without knowing the exact legislation that you're asking.
No, actually, that's perfect. And I did want to highlight something for the viewers who just heard that and heard your answer. It is a very tough question because it is an ill-defined question. And for everyone who thought of your answer, I want them to then think, what exactly did I ask? What is more gun control? What does that actually mean? Because I didn't actually say anything. So yes, you had a great answer to a question we've often heard from the media that is ill-defined, and you pointed that out. And I just want to reiterate, it is an ill-defined question, but it is a very popular.
It's a good question. It really is. It just I was kind of caught off guard again. Every time you ask a question, I'm caught off guard by it because I'm like, you did a lot of research into these.
I've been doing this a long time.
You have, I can tell.
But again, that's why I want to get that addendum.
Reagan's policy, smaller government, and their answer. That's exactly. So right before you asked that question, I was getting ready to state to Zach by his previous question that this wasn't Reagan, but our founders intended on our country, right, that the federal government was going to rely on the states. In the past 50 years, we reversed roles, where states are now asking the federal government for aid, looking to the federal government for legislation because their states aren't going to pass it. It's the exact opposite of our foundational principles that this country was founded on, right? We were founded on a country of the states of the people, right? If it doesn't rely on the states, the power goes to the people. Right. We've reversed that. The federal government is taking all control. If the states aren't going to pass it, we're going to do it. States won't ban Second Amendment. We're going to do it here at the federal level. And it's just the exact opposite of what this country was founded on. So we must elect individuals, representatives to this country that are going to stand for the Constitution and its values. That's the biggest thing. And I tell people all the time this. And sorry, I turned my light on. I tell people this all the time. And it's just one of the biggest things to get across is that if you elect the same representative over and over again and expect a different result, you're insane, right? It's literally in the definition. And our founders, they literally pushed for states to run the federal government, not the federal government to give aid and buy the states out, which is what's been happening over the past. It's been longer than 50 years, but I'm going to say 50 years because that's been the biggest switch in our government. It's been in the past 50 years.
No, I agree. So, just so everybody knows, Zach, I've run out of my formal questions, and anything else, I don't know how long we want to go, but anything else would be off the top of my head, which probably would be even tougher questions, believe it or not.
Situational. Everything is situational.
Yeah, I mean,
that was going to be my rebuttal to your question about further gun control. Is I kind of caught that question, but I wanted to let him answer it. it's kind of a setup for entrapment, because if you'd answered any other way, it would have kind of been wrong, because there was no direct question of what gun control or what gun laws.
Right. And no matter what you said, I would have been following up with, no, that's clarified as I did.
So it was a really good answer, and I'm actually kind of really happy to hear it, because the question of what gun laws, what gun, who's going to enforce it, asking those questions to answer the question was really good. So my next question, one other question that I had planned that I wanted to ask is, if elected and put in office, what would you propose for Missouri or for your district? Any type of legislation, any type of insight that you could give on how we could better secure schools, shopping centers, to kind of combat this mass shooting epidemic, as they're calling it.
Well, the first thing I would do out of anything, right, invest in a mental health awareness. That'd be the first thing. That's the first way to protect, especially with minors, especially after COVID. After COVID, these kids that went through, I mean, I couldn't imagine going through school with COVID and getting taken away from your friends, people, they don't even have families. Some of these kids don't have families, right? So to be taken away from all this, right, out of, like that, because of some hope job that Obama paid to the Wuhan lab in China, right? They got all they had their lives turned upside down. They went through a lot of mental health issues. And what did we do? We gave them computers and tablets and said, hey, do school from home, right? Never addressed the serious issues. That's why suicides went up so high, right? Specifically in minors. So the first thing I would address mental health issues. Second, security, right? Why do you think that school shootings don't happen in Democratic-run cities? Because it's safer outside than it is inside the school, right? Or it's safer inside the school than it is outside. My bad, I had those reversed, right? Look at Chicago. They don't shoot up schools because they shoot up the sidewalks, right? There's no need to go shoot up the school. These cities, they have security guards, right? I know it's crazy. They have human resources officers and they have metal detectors. Because and that's what Democratic cities do well. That's like probably the only thing you'll ever hear me say that's done well. And it's probably because the ridiculous crime rate that's outside. Because when they walk outside of that school, they don't have bulletproof vests on. They better, run.
Right.
What they have left. But these Democratic cities, they do it right by having armed security guards, not armed, even armed security guards, human resources officers. They have, 5, whereas we have 1 in my district. We have 1 in our schools, right? The doors are locked, and they have metal detectors getting in and out. These are big things we can do for a little amount of money. How much does it cost to hire a security guard for a year? Even if you paid them $55,000 a year, right? And the schools who are getting ridiculous money. Yeah, I'm well aware, Peggy. I'm sorry, she just popped up on there. Yeah, these in my district specifically, I live in the suburbs of St. Louis, right? St. Louis school districts, they're safer because they literally have metal detectors to get in. They have armed security guards. They have human resource officers. Even if we pay these people $55,000 a year, right, and we hire 2 armed security guards and we put in metal detectors, which cost about $3,000, $4,000 a piece, right? 2 people plus that, you're talking, let's say $108,000, and this is over time. These districts, in my district, or in my district specifically, right, $11.8 million went to Parkway during the COVID relief for sanitation and all the other stuff that they got. $11.8 million. Superintendent, he got a $50,000 pay raise.
Right.
Right. So to sit here and tell me that we can't afford to protect our children, when I drop my children off, my children go to a public school. When I drop them off at school, right, I expect them to keep my children safe because I can't do it while they're at school. If I could sit out there all day, every day, I would, but I can't. So that's
there's two things I'd kind of like to go into on this subject because it's obviously a very hot topic in politics right now. It's one of the most asked questions of all candidates across the country. I can testify that, and I want to use these words lightly, but rashly as well. when I first dropped our daughter off, our 15-year-old daughter off at her new school where we live, it reminded me of a prison. They're not with a perimeter fence, but we weren't allowed into certain parking lots. There was security guards everywhere. They closed down the one access road for the school buses with armed detail. And when you walk in the front door, it is an airlock style entrance where you walk through one set of doors and there is a second set of doors 10 foot later. The doors are all built out of reinforced glass with steel caging so that nobody can just barge through the glass. They also have their own school police force. They're actually a police detail employed by the school, and there are 8 to 10 officers. A couple of them are veterans and former law enforcement in the area. A couple of them are volunteers, and a couple of them are paid. Now, with that being said, it would be quite difficult for anybody to try and plan any type of elaborate attack on our school. All right, and it makes me feel really, really good dropping the kids off at a school that takes the school security to that level. So as a firearm organization, one of the big things that we have really stepped behind and gotten behind is securing the schools through armed guards, metal detectors, school resource officers, police officers. There's plenty of veterans that are mentally stable. There's plenty of retired law enforcement that are mentally stable. There's plenty of ways that we could incentivize their time into doing so. Even if they're retired and they're on a fixed income and they're not able to, earn any more money because it would mess with their income, we could give them tax breaks on their fixed income for volunteering time.
We should be doing that. We should be doing that anyways. With our
I agree.
And our senior citizens, because they're the most vulnerable in this country, and to sit there and charge them taxes and everything else that they get charged is ridiculous. This is
Absolutely.
the problems in this country that we do is because people pay into Social Security and everything else, and then they get taxed, property tax and sales tax and everything else, and they can't afford it.
The other thing about that is the GFSCA, Gun Free School Zones of America, or Gun Free School Zones Act of 1990. Our wonderful Biden was one of the supporters. It created the framework of all the gun-free zones in America. It started with the GFSCA 1990. After the GFSCA of 1990, we had businesses and churches that started putting up their own signs and getting their own permission to not allow firearms to be on site. And from then till now, we've seen an increase in shootings in all of those areas. They become soft targets. So we're always behind that, and I'm really glad that we kind of touched base on that, because it's one of the topics right now that really needs to be addressed.
That would be number one on my in that first 100 days that Michael asked earlier, would be the repeal of SB 2070, this Gun Free School Zones Act of 1990, and the amendment to 1996. But anyways, the Gun Free School Zones Act would be in the first 100 days of repealing.
Okay.
That would be.
It's a soft target, and on top of that, it's unconstitutional. And by what I mean by that is, it takes the individual liberties away from those who are inside the building. If they're underage, they can't own firearms anyways, right?
Right.
So why is it that we have underage shooters? Because they don't care, right? So with that being said, teachers should have every right to defend themselves wherever they are because it's their God-given right, in which it infringes with SB 2070. So first thing we need to do is repeal it, my bad.
Well, my last quick question to finish that topic off.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to let you know that I thank you for the time you've given us today, Wesley, and the answers that you've been very complete and forthright with. And I thank you for that. It's not always the case in my experience. So I find it refreshing when I do. I do need to mention that because I do need to go. I do have something else I have to take care of. But I wanted to thank you for your time today, your complete answers on wide range of subjects that I think are very important for people to consider when looking at voting. I hope people will look at this interview and consider it strongly when they come up to the August 2nd and the primary in Missouri. Zach, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation. I look forward to it again. And I only have one last thing to say. And Wesley, let me ask you, was it fair and tough, or was it too much?
No, it was fair and tough. There were questions that needed to be answered. Now, I'll tell you, I had no idea. I've never met Michael before. I talked to Zach earlier today, but I had no idea what I was going to be asked. He's like, hey, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm free most of the time. I was like, I kind of have my own podcast, but yeah, I'll come join this. And the questions were definitely stuff I was not expecting. I thought we were talking about the Second Amendment, and he came out with all kinds of stuff. So I really appreciate the questions because it's a good thing to adapt to. And I'm a voluntary representative candidate. This is my first time ever doing it. So
it's exceptionally well questioned. There are many.
I do the best I can with what I got.
Many candidates who've been elected for many years can't handle the questions I asked. So you did a great job.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And I got to go. Thank you to the audience. We think you're wonderful. Thank you for taking time to ask the questions. We see your comments. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Just have to take off today.
Yeah, right. Thanks for coming. Sorry that we got started to a late start, and have a good night.
You too.
What was the last question you had, Zach?
So my last question, I just kind of wanted to touch off and kind of argue one point of the topic that we were just on.
Okay.
We came across some arguments last week. One of the questions that was asked during our show was how we felt about the school unions, the teachers' unions, saying, and this is not a thing that's gone nationwide yet, I don't believe, because it hasn't gotten any MSM attention, and it hasn't really gained any traction. But there's been a couple of union offices or representatives across the nation that have stood up and said that it is not the teacher's duty as a teacher to protect your child while they're in school. And the way that they said it is that the way that they stated it is that the school system puts the students through training exercises for reactions to like natural disasters, training exercises for bomb threats, training exercises for this, that, and everything else. And if the student does not comply with said training during an event of a mass shooting or a natural disaster, that the teacher should not be expected to put their life or their body in harm's way to go after the one student that doesn't exercise the training that they've been given. How do you feel about that?
I hear this a lot. So just to be clear, I have three of my sisters are teachers, right? And we kind of butt heads quite a bit because, I fight the NEA. I was the first one in the United States to go after the school districts for mask mandates, right? First candidate ever to do it. And I went after 8 school districts. Anyway, so me and my sisters, we kind of butt heads about this. But I'm against the NEA. And the way I look at it is, don't think of it as a teacher. Don't think of it as you have to protect my child. Think of it as protecting your own life. Your life is more valuable than whoever's trying to kill your children. And most teachers, and I would say this with just knowing a lot of teachers, right? If I were to take a poll of the 20 teachers I know, I would be willing to bet 18 of them would tell me that they would do anything to protect their children, and that they love their children in that classroom like their own kids.
Right.
So for the NEA and all these other teachers organizations, I'm coming after you. When I'm in Washington, you better believe it. I'm taking you down because you guys are just terrible bureaucrats that have ruined this country, right? With standardized testing, no child left behind, and now this extra gun control because you guys are unwilling to accept the fact that it's not gun violence, it's mental health issues. And so I don't take a lot of what the NEA and these other teachers organizations say, because here's
you had mentioned earlier about the mask mandates and about the something else that I can relate to very well that you touched base on. Our daughter that's 15, about to be 16, is going through some serious mental health issues. COVID, being trapped in the house, lockdown, doing everything remotely from laptops and tablets, really amplified that to a very hardcore level. We've had to endure family therapy, individual therapy sessions. You know, it's been tough, and I think that it really caused a lot of damage to our youth, to our children. We removed the societal factor from our kids. You know, they no longer were out socializing with friends, playing games, having sports activities, anything. So it's really awesome, you know, to talk to you about the stance that you're going to take in defense of that and how you stood against the mask mandates. I haven't worn a mask since day one.
There's one thing I want to bring up, and it might seem kind of conspiracy, but it's not.
Right.
I believe over the past 20 years, our government has, 30 years, right, since 1990, so 32 years, our government has attempted to sway our country into the Great Reset, right? However you want to say it. And the reason I say this is they've created a system in which we trained people of my generation, right, my age group, into being stupid. They've trained them to be stupid and believe whatever CNN and the Democrats and the left say. And it's just the truth. Nobody questions it. I always was a questioner in the Army. We need 5 people to go sweep this. Well, that's stupid. Why do we need 5 people? There's only 2 brooms.
Right.
Why do we need 3 people to stand around and then take turns? Like, this doesn't make any sense. How about we just send 2 people? Anyways, but this is the kind of stuff that it takes. But 32 years ago, our government started their process, right? It's way beyond standardized testing. It's way beyond bureaucrats, right? It's way beyond no child left behind. But we made a country of, we made it a weak generation, and now that weak generation's who's voting, and that's why we have the problems we have. Now, Donald Trump jumped in 2016, right? He was a fighter. He exposed the country to everything that was happening, right? Between the fake news media, between the radical left-wingists, between conspiracy theorists, between the Steele dossier, all this stuff that was against this one man, because this one man was a threat to the future direction of this country, right?
Right.
They reined it in, and now they're out there fishing again for the same thing, and they're doing it again and again, and they're trying to continue. And I think it all comes back down to the World Economic Forum, and there's a way that these people can stay in power if all the world is one equal.
I think it's definitely a power race.
But I really believe that this has been going on for a long time. This has been a plan.
It definitely has gone too smoothly to not be orchestrated and planned. I disagree as much as I'm sitting here in my existence with WEF. But the thing, it's really difficult to...
WF, good luck.
It's the thing that's really hard to shed light on is any type of orchestrated plan, because anybody that does just gets called all kinds of names and shot down and shut down. And I forgot where I was going with this, but it's all been planned. Like I told you earlier, I'm not real big into conspiracy theories. Our organization is not going to be labeled as a conspiracist. We take a lot of pride in educating people and providing facts and analytics and statistics of everything. And I kind of remember where I was going with this. The whole orchestration and plan of this is what people need to realize is the Democrat Party has been the best party at playing the long game for a very long time. And what we need to do now is we need to get a wave of younger generation conservative Republicans in there that have got the mentality and mindset and willpower to play a long game. Because if we don't stop this long game that they're playing now, that they've been playing for the last 50, 60 years, there won't be no stopping it. But you answered all my questions real great. I'm really happy that you came on the show. I also have to kind of wrap things up here.
Yeah, me too. I gotta head out.
I gotta go eat dinner.
All the questions answered.
We kind of did this last minute, no notice. I called you just to ask you some questions earlier. I really appreciate the time that we had on the phone. I'm really happy that you came on board tonight and jumped on the live stream. Usually we do a few days of like advertising it and try to have some more viewership.
Yeah.
So,
I appreciate it. Any time is a good time for me. Well, most of the time.
Awesome. Well, maybe we can set something up and do another one here in the near future, and have a little more traction with a little more audience. I did look into people that you told me to look into. We're going to bring Brandon Wilkinson on tomorrow night.
Awesome.
And next week we have a couple, from other states that we're going to be doing. So hopefully, as we keep moving forward, like I said earlier, I think it's really important that anybody with a platform starts trying to help educate people, because let's face it, the younger generation is all indoctrinated. That's where I was going with this. Before we go real quick, that's where I was going with this. The indoctrination and the undereducation. When you were just speaking a minute ago, I always refer to our country as a nation of headliners. And when I say a nation of headliners, I'm not talking about a headlining in a car or, anything like that. I mean, everybody is so programmed on a day-to-day basis, and now it's much worse than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because I remember when I was a kid, my father figure made enough money on his income to support our whole household. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She did arts and crafts stuff. We still had family time, went out and did little trips and vacations. Nowadays, with inflation, people can't afford to do that. So you've got households where the mom and the dad are both juggling different schedules to be out working to make enough money to support the family. So there's not much time with your kids. And I call us a nation of headliners because we wake up in the morning, we fire up the coffee pot, we listen to Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, and whatever we hear in the headlines is what we make our day all around. All right? And then these people go to work and they bitch and moan about HR 7910. They don't know what it's really called. They don't know it's called Protect the Kids Act. They just hear about HR 7910. They hear about gun laws. 90% of them people don't actually take the time to sit down for 5 minutes, get on the Congress website or get on the government website, look the bill up and read what it's actually called. They just immediately feed into the headline and think, oh, I got to go sign this, Protect the Kids Act. Definitely got to go sign this. We just had a school shooting. And that's the biggest problem in our society today, is people aren't educating themselves. And I really put a lot of the blame on the fact that people don't have the time to educate themselves.
And that's what I tell people all the time. How do they expect? How does any organization, how does anyone expect United States citizens to ever do anything different? What I mean by that is, when the government becomes tyrannical like they obviously are, who's going to stand up? Because you're not going to get a paycheck for it, right? People in this country, hear me out, rather get taxed 37 cents on the dollar than say, absolutely not. We are not paying that. We're going to all get together and stand up and say, no, we're going to pay 20 cents on the dollar.
Yep.
People are okay with losing almost, they're getting 37% at the higher tax bracket, 37% tax. People are okay. We need patriots to stand up and put their voices out for new representatives. We have to, and anyone with a platform. I do it on my platform. I endorse candidates that I believe in. I endorsed Dr. Terry Namkung yesterday. He won, not because of me, but because he had tons of endorsements from other people that I know too. But Dr. Terry Namkung won last night in Virginia's 3rd District. But he's a fighter of a patriot. He worked in the Pentagon. He's from Virginia, right? Great man. He won last night because people are waking up. They're seeing. But we need that to continue to go through the rest of the primaries and through the general election.
And I think it's really beneficial and important, no matter the size. Like we discussed earlier, every vote counts.
Yes.
Some elections are lost by a handful of votes. You can count on 2 hands. I don't think we've ever had one that close, but you know what I'm saying.
There's one here that the guy literally lost by 1 point in the race. One vote. Literally
we feel really good about using our platform to do this, and we get very in depth, as you can tell, in a very short notice. We get very in depth with researching candidates that we decide to support and get behind.
He was stuff up that I talked about a year ago.
Oh yeah.
I just happened to remember it because of the topic that it was on. I was like, oh, I remember what I said for that topic. But
yeah, he's really good at this. We got a couple other ones that are really good as well. We got another gun guy that really touches on a lot of gun laws, and then another guy that's very into the Constitution and the Declaration and stuff like that. But I think it's really important we use our platforms. Obviously, they've been using the platforms against us for the last 14 years.
Yes.
So like I said earlier, it's time to start fighting fire with fire. Every vote we can help counts. And I don't sit here and tell everybody, hey, go vote for Wolf of Washington, Wesley Smith. I say, hey, watch this video. Watch how he answers these questions. Watch how we put him on the spot. Check out what he did last week. Check out what he said last year. And then make an educated voting decision. Don't vote based off of emotion for what your favorite movie star said.
And if you go and you go watch, I'm sure you guys have already looked into me, but if you watch any of my prior videos, I tell people, if you don't support me, that's fine. If you don't vote for me, that's fine. But find a candidate in whatever race you choose and support them. Find a candidate you like and support them. I tell people all the time, my opponents, I mean, this one guy, he said he was an independent, and he said he didn't know who he was going to vote for. I gave him my opponent's phone number. I was like, I'm not going to hide that from you if I have it. So here's his phone number, so you can call him. And then the guy called me back 2 days later and said, you know what, I'm voting for you. I like you better. I was like, that's fine, But if you don't support me, support somebody in any race. Doesn't matter what it is. You have a different platform, but when I'm speaking directly to the people here, find someone in your local races, support them. Whoever it is, doesn't matter what the candidate is. But they need that support, whether it's monetary, you're making phone calls, you're helping them, you're just sharing their post. A share, as you know, building your following that you have, a share goes a long way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's really good. I've had, like I told you earlier, I haven't actually totaled up how many thank yous I've gotten yet for our endorsement of Ryan Kelly for governor of Michigan. But we got behind Darren Bailey for Illinois. We got behind Peggy Hubbard. I've had over 400 people reach out to me in the last 2 weeks that we got behind Peggy Hubbard.
Yep.
Over 400 people that have reached out to me in comments, in private messages. Some have called me, some have emailed me, and they've expressed great gratitude and being thankful for us doing the research we did that helped them with making their decision to go out and vote early for Peggy Hubbard.
Yes.
And, that's just 400 votes, but at the end of the day, 400 plus votes might win an election.
Yes.
And a lot of people, I feel, in this country today, especially the younger generations, they vote off influence. They vote off who their friends are voting for. They vote off who their family's voting for. They vote off who their favorite movie star on Instagram said should win or shouldn't win. So that's when I make the statement that we need to fight fire with fire, is we need to get our social media platforms to actually start fighting fire with fire. Politicians getting involved with podcasts is amazing. It's not new, but we need to start actually utilizing the podcast to help win elections, not just gain social media clout and fame. So that's what we're trying to do.
Like I said, we go by the rule of 10. For every one person, they know 10 people. So for every one share, you're going to get 10 other people that at least see it. And that's kind of how we run our our social media. And we went from 1,000 followers to I think we're almost to 9,000 now in the matter of the past few months. And it's all about getting the shares, getting the likes, inviting people, and having people invite people. That's the biggest thing. Get people engaged and invite them. And that's the best way. We are going to take over, not only take over Facebook, but we're going to take over this country come the end of this year.
Yep.
As long as we continue to fight with real patriots, we will have. I mean, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be like a party for the next 2
years. I'm really excited to see it. I'm really excited to be taking a part in it. The situation I'm in has given me a lot of free time to actually
sit here and invest my time and really build the relationships I've been building. I would have
never guessed 3 months ago, owning a construction company and working for myself, that I'd be sitting here today interviewing political candidates, talking to already elected politicians, speaking with celebrity models, musicians, movie stars. I never would have guessed it. But we're pushing. We're going to continue growing. We're going to keep going. And I'm really happy to do what I can to take part in winning some elections for some real conservative Republican people that are for the people.
Yes.
So I'll let you get off here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I really do. And like I said, thank you for bringing me on. And I really appreciate those questions. Man, I was not prepared for any of those. I was like, man, I had no idea. When he asked the first one, I was like, all right, that's how it's going to be. It's going to be these all completely different than the Second Amendment questions that I was expecting. So,
well, we kind of try to divide it up because it's not, we don't just need everybody that's all pro-gun in office. We need people that are going to address the actual issues at hand. The Second Amendment's one of the big ones right now because of all the mass shootings, but there's a lot of stuff going on that we really need people to start addressing and stop overlooking and stop selling out on it. And you and I, we can set up another podcast that'll actually take place a little bit earlier when more of our viewership is around, so that we have some more questions. But you've touched base on a lot of really good topics. You answered the questions really well. One of the best things about a political interview is going into it not knowing what the questions are going to be, because when you react under maintaining complete composure and not losing your cool or losing yourself, it shows.
Yeah, you should ask my campaign staff. I always write up what I'm going to say, and then literally every single time I don't say anything. I just go off.
Yep.
I really don't say a word that's on it. I'm just like, oh, this is going to be so great, and then I get there and I'm like, you know what? It's not who I am.
It really shows integrity when you can speak from the head, speak from your mind on the spot, and maintain that level of composure that you've had all night. It really shows integrity. It really shows quality, and that's what we need in office is people that can answer those hot topic questions right off the spur of the moment. If some random guy comes running up to you in the road and says, we need more gun control, just like Mike just said, it's really important to have that type of composure to be able to answer those questions under pressure. And I really appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
Yep, we can get together again sometime here.
So, yeah.
Yep, I can send you a couple of emails and a text message and get you back on sometime later the week or next week or something, and we can keep going. Tomorrow we got Brandon Wilkinson coming on for half an hour. So
can't wait to watch. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome, man. You have a great night, and thank you for coming. All right, guys. For those of you that watch this in the middle of the night, for those of you that have been here kind of in and out throughout the time, that was Wesley Smith, Wolf of Washington, 2nd Congressional District for Missouri. Kind of had a brain fart there for a second. I want to thank all you guys for watching. I want to thank you guys that did hang out and ask some questions. Really important. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Feel free to tag Wesley Smith, Wolf of Washington, in the questions if you'd like him to answer them. And as always, thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to invite all your friends to come follow the page as well. The larger our voice gets, the farther our voice reaches. And as you know, we've been having a lot of issues with the social media silencing and all that. So make sure you help us out, share the post, share the videos, share everything you like. Invite your friends to follow the page. And we'll see you tomorrow with Brandon Wilkinson, also of Missouri, at 7 p.m. Tonight we kind of got started off a little late. I was having some technical issues with the internet. So I thank you guys. I'll see you later.